Hello, friends of Wildland Fire. This is Darren Clable, the State Fire Meteorologist for South Dakota, and this presentation was created on April 10th, 2025. We are going to look at the fire potential across South Dakota and really the northern Great Plains and kind of eastern Rocky Mountain regions throughout this presentation. So our goals, look at some wildfire climatology, see what makes big fires occur during the summer months, look at some forecast conditions for the next 1 to 6 months, and we'll kind of just wrap up with an overall potential for South Dakota. I do want to stress, though, that the overall wildfire risk is the sum of the environmental potential and the ignition potential. And here we're only addressing the environmental potential. I'm not touching on the ignition potential because, of course, we can have 1,000 different ways to start wildfires. Tough graph to look at first, but if you look at the upper left graph, that represents basically northwestern South Dakota. The lower left graph is going to represent southwestern South Dakota. The middle graph on the far right-hand side is east central South Dakota. So it's kind of a map of South Dakota with these graphs. In each graph, on the bottom, you have January through December. On the left-hand side, you have area burned. So example for the Black Hills here at the left middle, we have area burned over here. That's in hectares. And on the right, you have number of fires. The number of fires is read by the line graphs. The area is read by the bar graphs. And I have total area, and then I broke it out just by lightning. So if we focus on the Black Hills, if we look during the month of July, which is the peak fire month for South Dakota, the total area burned in this study is about 30 years of data. And in that total time frame within the Black Hills, we've burned, roughly 50,000 hectares. And if you multiply that by 2.5-ish, you get number of acres. And during that same time frame, we had, just shy of 1,200 fires, and that was total fires. So that's kind of how you read these graphs. The thing I want to point out is that for western South Dakota, it's really the summer months that we have a peak in fire activity. So tall bar graphs, tall lines just shows you that we have the most fire activity in the summer months in western South Dakota. We do have a sub-peak in March and April, which is kind of something we see every year. If we look at central South Dakota, most of our fire activity occurs kind of late summer into early fall. And then if we look at eastern South Dakota, most of the fires actually are in March and April, but they're much, much smaller if you look at the total area burned, and they're much fewer and far between if you look at the number of fires. So kind of for this presentation, we're going to think about the western third of South Dakota, even the western half of South Dakota, in terms of having a peak fire potential during what we would consider the normal fire season of kind of the late summer months going into early fall. So we look at those. What are the climatic drivers of large fire growth across western South Dakota? Well, in the months of June, it's drought, above average temperatures, and then short and long-term precipitation deficits. So if you have a dry April and May, you tend to get more fires in June, which totally makes sense. For July, it's largely the same. But for July, there is a stronger signal for above average temperatures in June, leading to large fire growth in July. For August, drought isn't necessarily as important. It's really above average summertime temperatures and short-term precipitation deficits. During the month of August, our fuels are typically drying down anyways, and if we have short-term precipitation deficits, we might not see drought yet. However, it's going to stress that vegetation and it'll dry it down even quicker. So these are some of the things we're going to kind of focus on throughout this presentation. So over the past 12 months, this is our percent of normal precipitation. The warm colors are below average precipitation. The cool colors are above average precipitation. And largely across the western United States, especially the southwestern United States, it's been a really dry past year. And if you look at South Dakota a little bit more closely, you'll see West River areas have been drier than average, somewhere between maybe 60 and 80% of average over the past year. Eastern South Dakota has been a little bit closer to average through that time period. If you look at the departure from normal precipitation on left and then percent of normal precipitation on right, you'll see similar trends. So this is just for South Dakota. And this is just for the past 90 days. If you look kind of West River, it's been dry. The Black Hills have been dry. Northwestern South Dakota has been dry. We're starting to see those departures from normal precip add up. But again, this is more or less a dry time of the year, the past 90 days. And so even though the percent of normal precipitation looks pretty large, the actual amount of moisture deficit we're running is, like on the order of an inch across western South Dakota. It's really not that much moisture. As we progress forward into April, May, and June, those are our 3 wettest months of the year. And so we're going to have to really see what kind of precipitation trends we're going to see in April, May, and June to diagnose what's going to happen in terms of wildfires later in the summer. Here's just the past 90 days departure from normal temperature. By and large, eastern South Dakota hovering around average, maybe a little bit warmer than average. Western South Dakota cooler than average, and that was really driven by kind of a cold February. Current U.S. drought monitor, this is valid as of today, Thursday, April 10th. That's the big map. Of course, we see drought to abnormally dry conditions across all of South Dakota. And that's really been an extension or an expansion of the drought that we saw roughly this time last year. And so it was a dry year. Obviously, we saw some drought expansion. And here's the 52-week category change in terms of the class degradation over southwestern South Dakota. It's been a 4-class degradation. D3, D4 drought in those areas. It's been very, very dry because they weren't in the drought in terms of what we saw last year. So it was a dry year. We're coming into the spring pretty dry. Let's kind of scratch the surface on what we might see moving forward. So kind of a busy graph, but this is a May, June, July, MJJ, temperature trends for kind of the entire North American continent. The red colors are inferring warmer than average temperatures in nearly all of these maps. The blue colors are inferring cooler than average temperatures. And I think by and large, the red stands out. I think that's the big takeaway is even across nearly all of North America, we are having pretty high confidence in above average temperatures. The middle top graphic represents that. That's a probabilistic forecast. If we look at South Dakota, we're kind of in that, tan color. That's giving us an 80% chance or more of having above average temperatures in the May, June, July timeframe. All of these other graphs represent different models or dynamic models or statistical models that we run to see what the temperature trends might be. And when we see this much convergence of evidence, it really boosts our confidence that we're going to see an above average period in May, above average temperatures in May, June, and July, at least in bulk. Looking at the same thing, but now for precipitation. Again, the northern Great Plains, there's a pretty strong signal for drier than average conditions. And the probabilistic forecast is leaning towards below average precipitation across the northern Rockies, across Pacific Northwest, across the Great Plains. So wide swaths of the United States are likely to see below average precip during the May, June, and July timeframe. And again, this is one of our wettest times of the year, the wettest time of the year. And if we're going to see below average precipitation and above average temperatures, that bodes well for the continuation or the expansion of drought really across the area. And this is the Climate Prediction Center's outlook for May, June, and July. I do want to point out that this was created on March 20th, and there will be another one that's created on, I think it's the third Thursday in April. So be on the lookout for this, but they're showing kind of similar things, expecting below average precip in the May, June, July timeframe, and above average temperatures across a lot of the United States. They said equal chances for the northern Great Plains, which means it could be above, it could be below, or it could be near average, but I would hedge my bets towards above average temperatures across our area as well. Now, if we move forward to late summer, so this is July, August, and September, the signal actually becomes stronger for above average temperatures during that time frame across the Dakotas and the northern Great Plains. Again, convergence of evidence. If all of the models are showing this, we have a very high confidence level that we will see above average temperatures in the July, August, September timeframe. And going to precipitation, we have really high confidence that during that same time frame, we're going to see below average precipitation. So let's talk about this for a second. Temperature and precipitation are linked, right? If you see really hot temperatures, it's going to dry your soils. And the surface is the source for nearly all the moisture in the atmosphere, right? We can get moisture advecting up from South Dakota or into South Dakota from the Gulf of Mexico. But if it's dry across all of the Great Plains, there's not a lot of native moisture, if you will, to drive thunderstorm development. The other thing is we have an ongoing drought. ongoing drought means dry soils. Dry soils absorb solar radiation much better, which leads to enhanced air temperatures or warmer than average conditions. And so drought breeds drought. It's kind of a positive feedback mechanism. And so we are expecting kind of drought expansion going through the summer with the hot, dry expected conditions. So our U.S. seasonal drought outlook, this was released March 31st. It is valid for the 1st of April through the end of June. And we are expecting to see persisting drought across the northern Great Plains, especially across all of South Dakota. So, just kind of looking at the forecast, what are we expecting to see? I would really hedge my bets towards an active fire season, not only across the Dakotas, but across the greater Rocky Mountain regions, Four Corners going all the way up the spine of the Rockies into the northern Rockies. I've spoken with our predictive service meteorologist here at our GAC. I've spoken with our predictive services meteorologist at NIFC. We're all in agreement that we are expecting a very active wildfire season across the region and across really the western United States. And this is inclusive of South Dakota. One thing about the graphs I do want to point out is that they are looking at decadal trends in temperatures. So when we're saying above average temperatures, really we're referencing it from a time frame that extends from the year 1990 through the year 2020, that 30-year period. So we're saying we're going to be warmer than that, the averages in that 30-year period. And I do want to point out that we've seen average temperatures across the United States warming over the past, so this would be 35 years. And so I think it's a solid bet to say that the next 5 years are going to be warmer than the previous 30 years just from these decadal trends that we're seeing. But again, that speaks towards the fact that warmer conditions are expected this summer and drier conditions are expected this summer. Here's my contact information. Of course, I'll be sending out different links and different information as we progress through our fire season. But I am definitely thinking above average fire potential across South Dakota and across the region all the way through the summer and into at least the early fall this year. There's my contact information up on the page. You can feel free to call, email, text. My YouTube channel is listed there. There's some training videos, some other Outlook stuff on there. I encourage you to check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.